Good day, coders. Today I'm excited to show you how to implement authentication in the backend of our social media app, Thumbtalk. Join me as we explore using Express and TypeORM to enhance the user security. So before I actually start with the coding, I'd like to go through the packages we might need. So in the README file over here, I've got these packages that you need to install. So you can take this moment to pause this video and actually um, write these in your terminal and actually install that, right? So since we're going to be dealing with authentication, so what we'll need is actually create our auth service. So we don't actually need this user service, right? For now, because this is a new project. So auth.service.ts, right? So over there, we're gonna have our auth service, right? And then in our controllers, we're gonna have our auth.controller.ts over there. And then we're gonna have a routes folder over here. In our routes folder, we'll have auth.routes.ts. Alrighty, so okay, that's fine for now, right? The others I'll just include as we actually code along, right? So first and foremost, what you need over here is to actually implement your class for your auth service, right? So in our actual auth service, we'll need to have like a constructor. So this is where we actually keep all our business logic, right? So over here, we'll need to say, okay, we've got a user repo, right? And this is gonna be now, right? And then this is gonna be a repository, and that's coming from TypeORM, and we're actually gonna be, it's gonna be a repository for the user's entity, right? Alrighty, and then over here in our constructor, we'll actually inject our query runner, right? Which is our query runner, right? That's what we need, and here we're gonna be implementing our register, right? So this should be an async, ah, async register. I don't know what's going on. So this is an async register over here. So we know that we're gonna have to have like some sort of like response, right? So we'll actually just create our an interface for our actual response, right? So here we're gonna have our API.response.ts, right? And here this is gonna be our interface. So export interface API response, right? And here we just want to have our actual result, which is gonna be, this is gonna be like a generic interface, right? So over here, this is gonna be KT, and we also want to have our error, right? And this error is gonna like gonna be of type API error, right? So this is gonna also be our actual interface. So over here, we'll need another interface over here, which is our api.error.ts. And over here, we'll just export our interface, which is gonna be that, right? So in our error interface, all we'll need is our message, which is of type string, right? And our actual status code, which is of type HTTP status code, right? So we did have, like in our previous video, we were implementing this HTTP status code. So you can also get these from like Axios or something, right? So over here, this is just like an enum of those status codes. Okay. So yeah, that's all we need for now. And then the next thing that we would actually like to do is actually now carry on and come over here, right? So this is gonna, okay, this is gonna give back a promise, right, of API response, which is of, which is gonna take in our user's entity. Alrighty, so here we'll just actually just try to create our response. So const response, which is of type API response, which is taking in our user's entity, right? And yeah, that's all we need. And then over here we'll just fill in all our missing properties. So response will be null, and we'll just try to return response. Alrighty, so now we've actually gotten rid of all the errors over there. So we know that this guy, this register function should accept user data, right? And this is gonna be of type auth DTO, right? Because this is gonna be accepting like the data from our body, right? So we're going to create a DTO for our auth DTO, right? So over here we have a folder called DTO. In our folder called DTO, this is going to be auth.dto.ts, right? So this is going to be export class auth DTO, right? And this is just going to take in our email, which is a string, and our password, which is a string. All right, but over here we're gonna add some class validators, right? So is not empty, this is coming from that class validator package that we installed. So this email is not empty, right? Then we can just copy that and paste it over here. And this will actually say our password and our email are not empty, right? Alrighty, so yeah, that's what we need, and here we can just import that, and yeah. Alrighty, so now first and foremost that we actually want to do is actually try to see if the user's email actually exists before we actually register that user, right? So we'll say user equals to await, right? Then we use our user repo dot find one user. So we want to find a user where, right, the email is equal to user data's email dot email, right? Alrighty, so if the user data's email, and we want to see if that user is actually active, right? So is active equals to true. Yeah, so that's all we need for now. So over here we'll just check if our user actually exists. So if we do get something over there, so we want to say response dot error, right? Because here we'll need an error, and our error will have a message. Let's see. So our error has to have a message, right? Message that, and status of that. Let's see what's actually happening over here, right? Oh, so we didn't import that, that's why. Okay, yeah. So now if we actually check over here, so this says this this username already exists, right? Because we can't have two users using the same email, right? So over here, this will throw like an HTTP status of a bad request. Okay, and we can just return our response. So we should be all good to go there. Alrighty, so once we actually find out that they're trying to register with an email that already exists, you should throw that error, right? So now the next thing is we want to create our actual new user, all right? New user, which is what we're going to store in our DB, right? So over here, we'll use this plain to class, right? So this plain to class is actually, we're going to try to convert like our DTO to our actual entity. So, but what this does is it will look into the fields that have the same name and actually map that. So what we're trying to do is convert whatever data that's coming in into this user entity class, and we're going to be getting that from our user data, right? So it's going to actually try to map the auth DTO to our user's entity. Okay, so yeah, so once that is done over here, you'll see that new user should be of type users now. Alrighty, but now we want to just make sure that we actually hash our password. So password equals to, we'll try await hash, right? So let's see. Okay, this is coming from that bcrypt, right? So what actually happens over here is for hashing our password, we need the data that we actually and the actual salt rounds, right? So what we're actually gonna then pass over here is our new user dot password, right? And then over here we'll say our pass int, and we'll actually pass like our actual salt routes, right? So where we're gonna store our salt route is actually in our .env. So we'll have a folder over here which is called .env, right? And over here we'll have salt, and our salt equals to 8. So normally, like this folder is gonna be ignored in like our when we actually push this to GitHub, so other people can't actually access what's in our .env, right? So, but once we've actually installed the .env package, so you can use something like import all as dot .env from .env, and then you can use .env.config, which is going to be a function, right? And now over here to access that salt, right, you'll just say process.env.salt, right? And then we just ensure that we actually convert that into an integer, right? So that should actually hash our password, and now we can actually go about storing our hashed password, right? So now we'll say this dot user repo dot save, right? And we're going to be saving our actual new user over here, and in our actual response dot result, we just want to make sure that we equate that to our new user. Alrighty, so this should be able to actually now just return that. I know that we're actually gonna also return like our password and stuff, but that just doesn't isn't a big deal for now. Alrighty, so yeah, so we should have everything there, right? So let's just say npm.start, right? So this is all our business logic in our auth service. So now we're gonna come over here and actually now create our actual controller. So for our controller, we'll just say export our constant, right? And we'll call this register user, which is going to be async. This is just going to be an arrow function, async, right? And then this is going to be, we're going to have our request, right? And here we can just say, let's see. So here we're gonna say that all import all as Express from our Express, right? Yeah, I think that's what we need. And then now we can just use our Express dot request, right? And then we want to have a response which is coming from our Express dot response. And then we just want to have this next function, right? This is going to come from our Express dot next function. Alrighty, so I think that's fine, right? Oh, but this is an arrow function. So since this is an arrow function, but I also think you can do something like this. Let's actually put this to the test. So you can have something like request response next function. I think this should work. Yes, yeah, this should work, right? So instead of having all of these, we can just have that, have it like that, and have it like that. Alrighty, so this is all good. So now we can actually have a try catch over here, right? And actually have our actual error, which is of type any. And then here, if we do get an error, we want to say response.status, right? This is from our HTTP status code dot internal server error, and our JSON is whatever the error is that we actually caught. All right, so yeah, that's what we need for now. But we also need to actually create like our actual query runner, because we're gonna be using transactions, right? So we'll say query runner equals to apps data source, right? Dot create our query runner. Righty. So, and then here we want to just have like a query runner dot start transaction, right? And then what we want to do over here is actually also create our user. No, this is our auth service. We want to instantiate our auth service, right? And over here we're passing it in this query runner. All right, so yeah, since we have that in place, right, what we then want to do is actually check for this. So we'll just say our const user, right? This user is going to come from our actual user's data, right? So this is going to come from our actual body, right? So this is coming from our request.body, right? Request.body, and we just want to make sure that we actually pass this into as a auth DTO. And yeah, I think that's how we should go about doing it, right? So this is going to be our auth DTO, right? And here we just want to check if we do have any errors, right? So we'll just say const errors, which is coming from our validate. Want to import our validate. So this is going to be from class validator, right? This is coming from our class validator, and this is going to be our validate. And over here, we trying to validate our actual user. So here we'll just say, because these are going to be for our errors, and now we can do something like this. We want to check if we actually do have errors, right? So we'll say errors.length. Oh, we need because this is a promise, so we need to await that. So now we need to say errors.length, right? If the errors.length is greater than 0, then all we need to do is return like a bad request. So the status for this is going to be coming from our HTTP status bad request, and then we'll have our JSON throwing our actual errors constraints, right? So how we do that is actually say errors dot, we want to map because it's giving us as an array. So our items, so this is going to be an item, right, which is our validate errors. So, and then over here what we'll need is say item dot constraints, right? Yeah, so this is going to be mapping out our actual constraints to tell us what we actually missed, right, from our actual body. So yeah, so that's what we actually need for now. And then what we actually now going to do is actually call our register, right? So here we'll just say const response, right, equals to, we'll just await auth service dot register, and in our register over here we'll just pass in this user, right? And then over here we just want to check if in our response dot we do have errors. If we have errors, then we just want to have this, right? So this is gonna throw a bad request, but over here we just want to say response dot error, no error, right? So this should tell us what the error is. Else we just want to say return response dot JSON, and we want to say response dot result that we actually got. But what we then want to do is if everything is successful, right, after like if everything is successful, so if we don't have like errors, we actually want to commit our actual changes we made to the DB. So we'll run query runner.commit, right, and this would actually commit our actual changes to our in our DB, right? So yeah, this should be for the register, right? So now we'd want to create our actual route, right? So for creating our route, we would want to have like something like this, which is our import. This is from, right? So this is import our actual routers from Express. So here we'll have auth router, and then this is gonna come from our actual Express routers. So here we'll have auth dot routes, right? So our actual route would be / register, right? And then this is gonna be a post request, and this is gonna be actually calling our register user controller, right, over here. So that's all good. And yeah, so another thing that we'll need to do is come here and actually use that, or just add our actual auth, right, which is going to be coming from our auth router. Auth route, let's see. So this should be exported. Export const auth router. Righty, so let's come over here in our actual index and have that. This, right, and alrighty. So now let's actually import that. Alright, so we should be having, yeah, everything we need, right? So ideally what will happen here, this will say if we use our actual register, this will call our actual controller, and our actual controller would handle all of these, right? So I do have like a user that's registered in this actual DB, right? So if I actually come over here and my actual register, right, and I try to register this user. Okay, so currently I'm getting like an internal server error, right? Okay, so now we should actually check as to why we're actually getting this internal server error. Alrighty, so let's just try to console.log, right? So here, user. Okay, now let's just try to run this and actually see. So this, we have auth, right? Oh, okay, that wasn't started. Let's actually see. Okay, it's not even getting there. All right, so now that we know that, so now let's just console.log, right? Our user data, yeah, user data, and then let's go to our actual auth controller and actually see if we do get to that section. Alrighty, so let's see. Oh, I think I know what the issue is. So let's go to auth. Yeah, over here we didn't initialize our actual, I think that's where the issue is, right? So we need to initialize our auth repo. So how we go about doing that is saying user repo dot query runner, this dot query runner dot manager dot get repository, right? And this is coming from our users entity. All right, so I think this should work. Let's test. Okay, let's wait for it to start up and actually put it to the test. Okay. Yeah, so now this actually works. This tells us that this user already exists. So if we say that, so now you can see over here that we actually successfully actually created a new user, right, which is that. But in our response, I don't think we do want our password and our actual, let's see. So in our response, we don't want to get the password and is active, right? So how we can actually get rid of that is over here. You can come here and say delete user net dot pass. No. After, right? So you can just say delete new user dot password, and then you can just say delete new user dot is active, right? So that's what you can do if you want to just get rid of your password, right? Because you don't want to give your password like in your response, right? And another thing that we can actually do is actually, okay, let's save that and actually see. Yeah, so in our actual response, you see here we just have our email, our ID, and the created date. Alrighty, so I guess now we've slashed out our actual register, right? So now we'll just go for our actual login. So for our login, we'll need to say async login user data, which is also coming from our DTO, and this is gonna be a promise that's gonna respond to us with an API response users, right? Okay, this is our actual function. So over here we'll just const, right, response, which is of type that. Don't think I want to rewrite some code that I've actually wrote. So I think that's what we need over here. So we'll have like our actual response and we'll return our response, right? Alrighty, so that's all we need for now. So another thing that we'd actually want to do is actually say for our user, and then now we'll actually just await this. Alrighty, so we'll use the same thing, right? So what we then want to do is actually say if our user, right? So if this user doesn't exist, or now we want to use this compare, right? So what are we actually comparing, right? So what we're actually comparing is our actual user's data's password. So we want to compare our actual password with our actual encrypted password, which is coming from our database, right? So, and this, I think this is a promise, so I need to await. I need to await that, right? So let's see, and yeah, alrighty. So what this basically says is if our actual user doesn't exist, if this user doesn't exist, or the user's password doesn't match, then we should throw like an error, right? So in our response dot error, we want to have our message, which is going to tell the user that username or password is incorrect, right? And then over here we're gonna have a status, which is gonna be a bad request, right? Our actual bad request. And if that happens, we just want to return this response. Alrighty. So otherwise, if that is actually successful, so what we then want to do is actually say our response dot result is equal to our user, but now we'll just want to delete our user dot password, and when I say delete user dot is active. I think that's all that we need. Now let's put this, oh no, we actually need to create a controller for that. So we can go about copying this register, right, and have the stuff over here. So this is going to be called login user, right? and this is going to be taking in our body and converting that into our auth DTO, right? And if we actually do have some errors, it should actually just give us our response with our actual errors, right? Our constraints. And then here we'll use this auth service, and we'll actually call this dot login, right? So this should give us our response. If we do have errors, it should throw a bad request, and if not, and then actually do that. But since we're not actually gonna be saving anything in our database, we don't need to like commit anything, right? So I think that's fine for now. Now we want to just create our route for that. So over here, we want to create our route, which is called login, and this is gonna be our login user. Alrighty, so now we can come over here and actually just duplicate this. And this is gonna be our actual login. So now let's put this to the test. So we see that that actually logged us in, but if we actually don't have like a password, this should throw an error saying password should not be empty, right? Right, and if we have this as a wrong password, this should say username or password is incorrect. So actually we did create like our actual register and our actual login, right? So over here we can even come to our actual database. In here, scheme, tables, and we can just run this query for our actual users table. So if we were to run this query, you'll see now we do have like 2 users, right? So this is the user that I created prior to the video, and this is the actual second user. Alrighty, so yeah, that's how it's done. And if you're new to the channel and you liked this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, peace.